In today's photo deconstruction, I'm going to show you how I created an art nude shoot inspired by vintage pinup. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I regularly get inspiration from the past, whether it's being inspired by paintings or old Hollywood or even pinup photography. So the image that I'm going to break down for you today is actually from one of my fine art nude photography workshops. In these intensive workshops, we have small groups and I photograph incredible talent, beautiful models, hair and makeup, and concepts. And so let's begin with the concept of this photo. The idea is I wanted to create something with a vintage feel. I wanted it to feel timeless. I wanted it to feel pinup, but of course with a modern twist. My idea wasn't to go exactly authentic, but to take some of those core elements. And so for my subject, I chose the beautiful Brianna Ashley. She is one of my muses, one of the models I use all the time. And what's amazing about her is this style that you see in this photograph, this is how she lives. She lives with this beautiful hair and makeup and wardrobe. And so this robe is actually one of her robes that she brought, and I used it as the inspiration for this shot. The idea was that I had this beautiful Catherine Delish style robe. It's the beautiful pinks. And so I began by choosing my background. I picked a coral background so it would mimic the color of the robe in the foreground. But then I was thinking, what else can I do to make this vintage? And I knew it could be with the styling, maybe a little bit of the lighting, but also the post-processing. Like, what could I do with the color grade? So before we get to that, let's actually take a look at the lighting. For this shot, I ended up using 4 different strobes. Let's actually begin with the background. Now, as I mentioned, that's a Savage Universal Seamless Coral background, so it's that lighter pink. And then I added 2 lights. One on either side of the background. So you can see that there's one over here on the right-hand side behind the column, one over here on the left-hand side. The idea behind this is it would give me control over how bright that background was. I could let it fall to shadow, be a little darker, a little richer, or I could lighten it up, or I could even go soft pastel. And so I have one on either side, as far back as I could get them without running into the columns in this space, in order to allow the light to spread out. The further back that I can have them, the more even illumination it would give to the background, which would be more even light across that seamless paper. So those are the first 2 lights. But then I needed to add in my main light. Now there are many different approaches I could have taken to this image, but I wanted something to be a little moodier, a little bit more sculpted. I wanted more control over my light. And so one approach I could have taken would be to maybe have a beauty dish with a grid. This is a common modifier that would give you a beautiful quality of light while still giving you more focused control. But in this case, I chose my favorite modifier, my go-to, the one that I use all the time when I want control, which is, of course, my optical spot. So this is the Westcott Optical Spot, and it has the kit lens. So this is the lens that comes when you purchase it. And so you can see, even in this behind the scenes, that it lights her face, but then it kind of cuts off at her elbows, kind of her midsection, allowing the rest of the body to fall to shadow. And so what's great about this is an optical spot allows you to have really tight pockets of light. In fact, it even has shutters in it that you can open and close to give you just slices of light. And so I could decide exactly what part of the body I wanted to be illuminated. And so I love that level of control. So I have my 2 background lights and then the optical spot on my subject. But when I did that, whenever you create shadow and you restrict the light, it means that the rest of the shadows in this shot will be relatively dark. And so the light that was illuminating her torso, well, the rest of her body fell really, really dark shadow, which is why I added the final light over here to the right-hand side of the scene. This is a medium umbrella with diffusion. So medium umbrella with diffusion is basically some sort of soft light source to fill in the shadows. This could have been an octabox, it could have been a 3x4 foot softbox, I could have even bounced the light perhaps into a V-flat. Any soft light source that is close to flat onto camera. The only goal is to lift and fill in the shadows. And so that's what it was doing in this scene. So those are our 4 lights, each one with a specific job. But let's take a look at what I did in post-processing. So this is where we ended up with the shot. It's kind of pale on her skin, that beautiful muted pink. It's very pastel in tone. But this is what we captured in camera. Now, by the way, as you've noticed, these images have been censored because YouTube and the internet and social media hates nudity. But of course, I love celebration of the human form, and I would rather not have to edit them and have them this way, which is why I have these art nude workshops. So you can come and create images that you can then print and celebrate the human form. But for our case, I'm going to have to hide it. So you guys will get the idea. All right, so this is what I captured in camera. So here's some of the elements. You can see that the optical spot is basically cutting just below her breast. Like it cuts off just below there. But it creates a bright, hard, crisp light on her torso. Now you can see that the background, that pink, I chose a relatively low power of my background lights, just enough to illuminate it without it becoming a competition to the foreground. I wanted the tones of the pink to match the tones of the robe, and you can kind of see that there. Now, some of the things that I'm analyzing that I don't like in this shot, I definitely don't like the highlight that I see on the background. That is from the optical spot spilling on the background. Now, I could have changed the angle of the optical spot, maybe move the subject further away, but I didn't, and so this is something I know that I'll want to fix in post. Also, her hair looks beautiful, but there are definitely some distractions I see, right? There's some frayed hair. I don't like on the left-hand side here that the hair kind of hangs out over her profile. I think that the profile is meant to be clean and really pristine, and so I find that to be a distraction. I likely think that the red nails are going to be something that competes. Everything here is meant to be warm, maybe almost monochromatic, analogous color tones, so pinks, maybe a little bit of pinky skin tone. And so I think the red nails are going to have to go. Other than that, I think that maybe the sleeve of the robe looks a little wrinkled, and it's not something that I even noticed in the moment. So if I can fix that a little in post, those are all things that I'd want to improve. So the retouching is going to come shortly, and I pay attention to all of those things. But I want to show you what I did with my post-processing. So the idea here is that I wanted the image to look vintage. I want it to look old. So what can I do to achieve that? Well, one of the tools I actually really like is a company called Exposure. They have a lot of presets that you can use to help emulate old film types. But I didn't use that in this case. Instead, I tried to use some of the knowledge I have. So often when film or prints get older, they warm, they age, they yellow. And so what I did is I warmed up the white balance overall. And in fact, in the skin tone and in the highlights, I went and I added more yellows. So what that does is it warms everything up. But then it looked a little too yellow. So I went in and I desaturated the colors. And so the result of those changes, so this is straight out of camera, this is what it looked like when I warmed everything up and then desaturated. And so you notice just how pastel and warm and desaturated everything in the image becomes, which I think is beautiful. And so then it comes in from all of that was done in a raw processor. It was done in Capture One. But then it comes over to what do I do in Photoshop, which are the next changes. So all of those things I pointed out, watch them change here. Cleaned up the distractions in the background, fixed the hair. I also brightened up the shine in the lower part of the body just a little bit. I fixed the sleeve and I made the nails appear more pink. So from where we began to where we ended, of course what I captured in camera is quite close, but we were able to achieve much more of that vintage look and that timeless vibe with my color grading and also the perfection of the retouching. So guys, if you would like to see the gear that I use to make these shots, you can check out the links in the description below. But if you would like to come create some beautiful fine art nude images with me, you can check out learnwithlindsay.com. If you go to the workshop section, I am regularly posting new workshops and I have many different topics, everything from fine art nude to fashion to advanced studio lighting and so much more. So you'll definitely want to check that out. And of course, I have so many of these photo deconstructions, so if you like to take a peek behind the scenes of everything from concept to lighting to post-processing, you'll definitely want to like and subscribe. See you next time, guys.